It's always nice when you have an issue or a problem to get 3 steps to solve that. Well, the Bible lays out problems very simply, and obviously those problems have roots and branches that spread out into a bunch of other problems, but it comes down to 3 major problems that we have that God, through Jesus Christ, provides, and let's discuss it. This is the Warrior Podcast, episode 177, and let's talk about a 3-step Jesus' 3-step solution to our problem. All right, so let's talk about our problem first. So in First John chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, the Apostle John is sharing with us really what is our problem. He puts it into kind of nice little picture here of what the issue is, and then Jesus gives us the answer in the Gospels. All right, here we go. So in First John chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, it reads, "Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world," here we go, "the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever." Okay, so here's our 3 issues we have. We have the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life. Okay, well, let's kind of break those down real quick so we can understand how those are our problems. And these are the things the world feeds. The world kind of puts it out in front of us. And that's never more apparent than on social media. See, I think what social media is like, the world has basically showed their way of transferring this desire or these problems to us on an ongoing basis through social media. Now, I'm not saying let's get rid of social media. I think that any tool the enemy can use, we can use as well, because we're in the world, not of it, right? We don't have to be bought in, but we can use the vehicles which are presented before us to share the word of God, which is ultimately the solution. But let's look at it. So in the word of God, in Jesus' Gospels, he tells us that in order to be his disciple, which is ultimately how to be in God's will, how to abide in God, is through his son Jesus, and that's to be his disciple. Okay, so he tells us very simply 3 things. 1, we're to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him. Now, I know you've heard this before. I've heard it 1,000 times, and rightly so. It's Jesus' solution to our problem. Okay, but let's break it down so we can really understand and appreciate on a certain level how these 3 steps solve those 3 problems. So if you deny yourself is to act like you don't know who you are. It's really denying that sinful nature apart from God, that sinful, desirous, lustful nature apart from God. And that's that pride, wanting status, wanting to be recognized, that pride of this life. And the world feeds that. Social media feeds that. The antidote to that is to deny yourself, to die to self, to say basically, I don't know who that is. I don't care what he wants. I don't know him. I'm not going to give in to whatever he wants. That self-denial is the first step, Jesus tells us. Now, that handles the pride of life. So anytime that we have this desire to be lifted up and glorified, to be seen by men and those around us as being something special, that's the pride of life. We're to deny ourselves. All right, number 2, take up your cross. Now, when Jesus said this was during a time where everybody understood what taking up the cross meant. Literally, the Roman government, when you were sentenced to death, and they were the only ones doing it by the cross, the crucifixion, they forced those men and women, mostly men, to carry their cross to the place of their death. Jesus did this at his crucifixion. So everybody understood when carrying a cross meant you're a dead man walking. So what does this solve when it comes to those 3 problems? Well, the lust of the flesh. Any gratification that you want to give yourself, the antidote to that is death, suffering, trauma, turmoil, being willing to do those things. So when Jesus says, take up your cross, you ain't being killed on it yet, but that attitude, that mentality, that motivation is like, hey, man, I'm walking towards my death with the instrument of my death on my back, carrying it, taking it up. And this is the attitude we should have is 1, deny ourselves, that pride of life. 2, take up our cross, denying the lust of the flesh, right, to gratify ourselves. We're basically agreeing to die. And lastly, number 3, Jesus says, follow me. Now, when we follow him, we keep our eyes, the lust of the eyes, on him. But we need to understand what the lust of the eyes is. The lust of the eyes is coveting things, seeing things that we want and desiring them, making efforts, making plans, kind of scheming and manipulating to try to get that done. And we always covet in our heart, but our eyes see what our heart desires and we covet it. And Jesus says that we are to store up treasures in heaven, not on earth. And so, in order to do that, we got to follow him. He is the ultimate treasure. He is the ultimate reward from God to us, is the presence, knowledge, and experience of enjoying Jesus. And the only way we can do that is by following him. But that's on the tail end of denying ourselves, taking up our cross, and following him. And this solves those three problems, because now anything that we covet after is going to be him and him alone, and to follow him as his disciples, as his followers. So there you have it. 3 steps to solve the 3 problems we have: lust of the flesh, pride of life, and the lust of the eyes. We do that by denying self, taking up our cross, and following Christ daily. There you have it, guys. As always, you are a warrior designed for glory, God's glory. And how's that done? Denying self, taking up the cross, following him. That's how we fight the war on this earth for all eternity. God be with you. Stay in the fight.